Welcome to the Wealth Setting Podcast. This is episode 528. Today is July 20th, 2026. I'm your host, John Pugliano. I'm also the founder and money manager at establewealth.com. I have my son, Joe, in the co-pilot seat. Joe is the tech analyst for my firm. And we are also impromptu live on Facebook. On Facebook. Where the heck are we at? Google. No.
Well, technically, I guess.
YouTube. So much for technology. Joe, what the heck are we going to talk about today?
We're going to talk about Warren Buffett and if he changed his mind on technology.
Man, I am so glad you didn't say we're going to talk about the World Cup.
I would love to talk about the World Cup.
You would, but I didn't watch one episode. I didn't even watch the halftime thing that they did the other day. Anyways, in any case, what are we talking about again?
Did Warren Buffett change his mind on investing in technology stocks?
Yeah, he did. Interesting topic there. Warren, he's a fairly humble guy considering he's a billionaire. Unlike some of the other billionaires that are always right, Warren occasionally and very often talks about being wrong, even when he's not. He has, I wouldn't say backtracked on technology. He has come out and said that, yeah, he's made a mistake over the years of not being invested specifically in Google, Alphabet, which he's recently taken a large position in. And he gave a really good answer, though, and it's something I'm totally on board with what he said. And basically what he said is that, and he didn't say, let me rephrase this too. I don't think he's changed his mind on technology as much as technology has evolved to the point where he wants to invest in it. He basically said that technology is now acting as a utility company or like a utility stock, where in the past they were invested, this is stretching it a little bit, but primarily they were basically an algorithm of some sort. They were all digital. And the reason everybody loved that was because that's a very effective way to make money, right? If you can produce, for example, like a book in a PDF format, then to reproduce it is basically free. And so you can have very high profit margins. And effectively, that's what companies have been doing for 30 years now in the technology sector. If you're someone that creates software, all that has changed now with artificial intelligence and the worry that large language models are going to be cannibalizing on software. And so you say, well, then why would Warren Buffett want to be investing in it now? Well, he's also looking at the fact that the big hyperscalers are beyond just investing in the software side of it, and they're actually investing in the hardware. And that's why he sees them as being a utility. I mean, you think about the gas company that provides natural gas to your house, or the electric company, or even the cable company for that matter. They have physical infrastructure that they've invested in, and you can't buy, natural gas from China or from someone else. You have to buy it from the company that has the pipeline that goes to your house. And in a way, Warren is kind of relating the tech companies to that now, because they're beyond the point of simply just creating software, or even in the case of somebody like Apple, which Warren has been on and off invested in Apple for several years now. But a company like Apple, when Steve Jobs, in the early days when he was in charge, he wanted to control the production quality, and everything was made in the US. Towards the end of his life, that started to shift to China. And then, of course, once Tim Cook came in, it basically all went to China. And the thought process there was, hey, we can design it here in the US, we can control the quality, but we'll farm out the manufacturing to the lowest, the place that has the cheapest labor, or whoever can do it the least expensive. That's a great strategy for making money, but it's not a good strategy for controlling quality, for controlling your intellectual property, and more importantly, I'll get into this in a minute, but more importantly, for national defense reasons. And again, as tech is now evolving to where they're not only designing and creating things in terms of the digital side of it, they are more and more owning the actual either manufacturing process, whether it be chip factories here in the United States, or trying to bring in more fabs of different degrees. But the bottom line is, these tech companies are moving beyond just trying to make a profit from selling a software and trying to be more vertically integrated, or at least control more of the system. I think that makes sense from my perspective, and why I've been for the past couple of years very much excited and interested and optimistic about the whole shift in our national defense strategy and national security strategy, where we have looked at key manufacturing and key raw materials and said, hey, we need to start making some of this stuff in the United States. And to me, that's really where this ties into the shift of technology, is that not only has the big hyperscalers, but everybody has figured out that to one degree or another, you better control some part of your supply chain, or else you just have intellectual property that's going to get ripped off. And so I think I'm encouraged to see that Warren has bought into Alphabet. It's one of my larger positions. It's something that I've been a big fan of, and I'm glad to see Warren's in it as well.
Yeah, he's been in the news a lot lately, even though he stepped back from everyday responsibilities at Berkshire. And another thing that popped up I saw is he's a philanthropist, right? He said he's going to give away all of his money, or
right,
at least most of it.
Yeah. As a side note, okay, I'm not a billionaire like Warren Buffett. When I die, I plan to not take any of my money with me either, right? I mean, a lot of these guys, especially Bill Gates, for years led this big thing about, oh, I'm going to give all my money away by the time I die. Well, we all do, right? Because when you're dead, you don't take it with you. But I'm sorry, I interrupted Joe. What do you have to say?
Well, he just announced his foundations that he's going to be donating to this year, right? And it sounds like for the foreseeable future. And one was left off that had been there for a while.
Yeah, for like 20 years, I think.
Yeah.
Who was that?
The Gates Foundation.
Yeah, Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. Shocking, huh?
Yeah.
I guess maybe Warren doesn't like Bill Gates' shift on global warming and stuff. Who knows?
Maybe, I don't know.
Or it could be the young Russian girls too, that Bill has a propensity for.
Yep. But now it's going to foundations that his kids will run. So
right, and pretty much it was too before, and obviously Bill and Melinda Gates was something that the Gateses ran. Again, I think it's really hilarious that all these billionaires that tell you that they're not taxed enough and that they're going to give away all their money, that somehow they all end up running their own foundations. And I can promise you that his 3 kids are not running those foundations for free. In one form or another, they're taking that private jet to Davos or wherever and figuring out how to spend the money. And hey, nothing wrong with that too, because I guess I'll publicly announce you are going to be the trustee of my dog's trust fund when I leave him all my money. So
oh, great, that's news to me.
You better start treating him better. I'm very proud of you for not insulting my dog on live YouTube.
Yeah, I know you love that thing.
I do love that thing.
So Berkshire owns a lot of cash, or they're sitting on a lot of cash right now.
Yep.
Does that concern you?
No, that comes up all the time, and all the time for like decades, because he always sits on a lot of cash. And a different way to think about this is that, because people say, well, Warren Buffett's 35% in cash, maybe I should be too, or whatever. And in fact, people think he's a lot more in cash than he really is, because if you back out and look at the fact that he not only has a public investment portfolio that he trades in, things like owning Coca-Cola stock and now things like Alphabet and Apple, but he also owns, we're talking to him, Berkshire Hathaway, right? The company itself. They also own a lot of private operating businesses, like you reminded me this morning, I forgot, Geico is a huge business of theirs. They own See's Candy. They own, I can't even list them all, a furniture store, a jewelry store. They own a lot of operational businesses.
They just bought into the housing
Yeah, yeah,
builder.
yes, yeah. They bought into the modular home builder. So they own, besides their stock portfolio, they actually own companies. And I don't know to what degree their cash is also can be tapped upon for operating capital for those other businesses. Because if you're running a business, you don't keep $0 in your checking account, right? You have to make payroll, you have to be paying your taxes, you have to have a lot of money for day-to-day operations. So I'm not sure to what degree his quote cash is also used to supplement working capital. But in any case, he does have a lot of cash. But I'll say this, I guess two things on that. Number one, the cash he has is invested. It's not like it's just not sitting anywhere either. He's invested in treasuries, which I think is very interesting because he's really not keeping up with inflation. And so, you have to ask yourself, well, why would he be invested so much in U.S. treasuries? He's a smart guy. He's only making, 3 or 4% interest on it. Obviously, inflation's running at least that high. So why would he do that? Being the cynical person that I am, I look at it somewhat as it's probably some kind of extortion money. I mean, if you're Warren Buffett and you're owning 400 and some billion dollars worth of U.S. treasuries, it's almost like he can use that as a buffer between him and the federal government when they come in and want to audit him or do whatever, or the Federal Reserve wants to work with him. He can always say, hey, look, I'm sitting on $400 billion of treasuries, leave me alone. And you may say, hey, you couldn't really do that, but think about all the people that make the comparison to China, and they'll say, oh, the US dollar is going to crash if China sells off all of its treasuries. Well, Warren Buffett owns more than 50% as much treasuries as China does, right? China owns 700 billion. Warren owns something like over 400 billion. So he is a significant holder of United States debt. And if you think that China can somehow put pressure on the US dollar by them threatening to sell, then Warren Buffett could certainly do that as well. Or again, Berkshire Hathaway is not necessarily Warren. But so I think there's multiple reasons why it makes sense for him to own a lot of cash, but not necessarily you. I mean as an individual investor. Having said that, though, at times I've been 100% in cash, right? I'm not afraid to sell everything and go to cash if I think there's a train wreck about to happen. But I'm not going to consistently be in cash for long periods of time because it just doesn't earn any money.
Very good. And then you brought up China. Something else in the news with China is the new Moonshot AI that they have.
Yeah, the Moonshot, and the markets were in a big panic, I guess, starting late last week based on that. Apparently, a Chinese national graduate from Carnegie Mellon in Pittsburgh decided to move back to China and start an AI company. And, again, they're saying, oh, this is going to be open source. The company's going to go public. They're going to make all this money. The whole world is going to switch over to Chinese AI, and they're going to dominate. And, of course, Russia and Brazil and the normal BRICS type nations are all going to use Chinese technology and not use American technology. Maybe, listen, the first 30 years of my life, we lived in a bifurcated world where there was what was called the Western nations or the free world, and there was the Soviet bloc. And there were multiple systems. There were multiple economic systems. There were multiple trade and technology systems, or at least two main ones. And for us to go back to that, I don't think that's the end of the world, number one. Number two, I also don't think that any rational person that's a CEO of a major company or anybody in our government is going to want to tie their databases to Chinese artificial intelligence. So again, I think it's going to be limited. I also think for people that say, well, this is going to crash things like the valuations of Grok or Anthropic or whatever. Well, I don't own those things, so I really don't care. I think that the bottom line with this technology, as well as all technologies, is that they eventually lower or reduce variable cost. That's why technology in and of itself is deflationary. That's really what's kept the United States afloat for the last 100 or more years. As we continue to devalue our dollar, we make up for it with productivity improvements and deflation as a result of technology. And at some point, AI tokens and all these other things will go down in price. They'll be more productive. They'll lower the cost. And whether it's Chinese technology or anybody else's technology, it will help lower the overall cost of technology, of the cost of technology, but not necessarily of the infrastructure around technology. Listen, the cheaper it gets, the more people will use it, right? So the more you use it, you need more memory chips then. You need more semiconductors. You need more electricity. You need more HVAC systems, right? You need more distribution networks. You need more fiber networks. That's why I look at investing in the broad industrial technology sector and not just one little narrow side of it. So I think it's all good. I think it's all eventually going to be good for broadening out and helping the overall economy. Our firm will not be using Chinese AI, though. We'll put that on the record.
Okay. Final thoughts to take us out. Oh, you wanted to give a shout out to...
Yeah, and I don't know who it was. You just brought that up. Do you know who it is?
Richard Jones.
It was Richard Jones gave us, he said something nice. What did he say? He thanked me for something, I think.
He thanked you for your recommendation in the regional banks.
On the regional banks. Well, thank you, Richard. I always joke and say that no one ever, I never hear from anybody about some of the calls I make. I always hear from people when they lose money or when they buy something that they think that I recommended that they don't make money off of. But when I don't invest in SpaceX, no one calls to thank me on that call or some of the other good ones we've had. But yes, and I haven't brought it up. In fact, we should do a podcast in the near future. Regional banks, even before just earnings had recently come out. In fact, actually, they probably haven't done that great since earnings, although it was a buy the rumor, sell the news event where earnings were fantastic, but I think they've pulled back a little bit. But you go back over the last, well, certainly since we've come out of the lows of April, I think regional banks have done phenomenal. And the reason I say we should do an episode on that is that that's really the nuts and bolts of the economy. The regional banks are the companies that are making the small business loans. They're making consumer loans. They're making real estate loans, and they're not participating in the big IPOs. So if the regional banks are making money, then that generally means the U.S. economy must be doing pretty well. And if you look at the performance, the outperformance that we've seen from regional banks, and the ETF I'm in is KRE.
Mm-hmm.
KRE. So that's the one I'm using to trade the regional banks. I took an overweight position in it, and for me, it's a long-term hold. I have no plans on getting rid of that anytime soon. But yeah, regional banks have done well. Anything else? We impromptu. I don't know if there's any other questions or anything else came up on YouTube. Good. Okay. Well, hey guys, as always, until next time, we're wishing you the very best returns.